Well, welcome to the second episode as we are interviewing Mr. Ryan Fontenot, the evangelist, and I'm here with David Norman, Dr. David Norman, and we are working through some different things concerning Ryan's ministry and interviewing him, what it means to be evangelist and his calling at the moment. So David has a good question he's going to start us off with, and David, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, so Ryan, you talk about how very early on in ministry you had a special calling, a special sense that God had directed you toward evangelism ministry.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, and you may have had this experience, you may not, but how can churches specifically support pastors and support guys on church staff that have that special calling, that special gifting and heart for evangelism? How do they support that, especially if it's leading someone to do that outside of necessarily the context of the local church? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think particularly inside the church, here's the thing that oftentimes we forget, and the church maybe hasn't figured this out yet, but the evangelist was given to the church, right? It was given to the church for the equipping of the body of the saints for the work of ministry. So we're a piece of that. And so I think a lot of times, David, you're right, where someone says, hey, I've got a call to evangelism, and we do have this, man, I've got to go tell, I want to go tell. And so the church doesn't know what to do with that. So they say, okay, go, get it, go, and so for me, I think there's a better way or several ways you can leverage the evangelist, the gift of the evangelist, with this particular in the local church, and that is this. Number one, I'd say the evangelist can be used to help equip your body. There's no one who's more passionate about sharing their faith than someone who has that fire inside them. And so, as one pastor once said, evangelism is more caught than it is taught. And so when you're around someone who has a passion for evangelism, it just seems to spread. So I'd encourage churches to identify those people and, man, let them begin to train and equip your people in whatever method there is, that your church uses for personal evangelism. Let the evangelists be part of that, helping train, helping equip. And so I think that's an important part. Number two is what we put out even with our prayer book here is hey, it's let them lead a prayer movement. Let them help call people to prayer for lost people. I know I've always found this in my life. We had prayer meetings, and we get in these prayer meetings, and they would talk about praying for the sick and all this other stuff, which is we should, but I would find I'd be irritated. I'm like, why aren't we praying for lost people? Why aren't we praying for laborers? Why aren't we praying for so I think all of those things, the evangelist is always going to be pushing us back to, hey, man, we've got to tell people about the gospel. We've got to get Jesus out there. There are lost people everywhere. So if you've got someone in your church like that, it's very possible they have the gift of the evangelist given to them, that God has put that in them. So I'd say, and let them help train, let them lead in prayer, and then special times that you have that you want to emphasize, bringing lost people or harvest times or whatever, obviously, like we've done with revivals and weekends and things like that are key. So all of those is how we can walk alongside of and walk together, as the body.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you're an itinerant evangelist, though. You're not necessarily connected with the home church at this point.
Right.
How can churches partner better with itinerant evangelists? Because I know some guys, they may be a little bit fearful in doing that.
Sure. Yeah.
And even some guys may even have reservations as far as trying to be manipulative or something like that within a service. Yeah. How do churches partner with an itinerant evangelist?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation, right? This is one thing I love, is I love talking with pastors. Having been one for 8 years, I have a special heart for guys like you, man, that are in a church. And the last thing I want to do is come in and wreck what you've been trying to build up and work on,
He appreciates that.
Definitely. I found that most guys do. So I think it's conversation, it's communication with the pastors, it's dialogue, and I'd say build a relationship with an evangelist and going, hey, what are you doing? What are you seeing God do? How can we work together? One of the tough things is that a lot of times evangelists think they're going to come in and be the answer. Pastors think the evangelist is going to come in and be the answer, and it just never works. Again, it takes that tilling of the soil, that ground, that tilling of hearts. And so that's where prayer comes in, before your meetings. Plan the meetings, walk through, hey, what's the expectations? How are we going to handle invitation response times? How are we going to handle whether they do love offerings or the honorariums or whatever? So have all those conversations. If we'll just talk with each other and talk through this, man, I found, man, we win in that. We walk in unified. So,
absolutely. So you have an interesting history where you have served as a pastor and as an evangelist.
Yeah.
So tell me the differences on what it means as far as like preaching and ministry for you in those two different roles. Like being a pastor, you're preaching regularly, sometimes multiple times a week. Being an evangelist, you may be a weekends only type of thing, or something like that. So tell me how that works with you and things like that.
No, that's good. Yeah. So, I'm reminded of what Paul told Timothy, right? He said, do the work of the evangelist. Now, I don't know what all he meant by that, but I think one of the things that he wanted that young pastor to know was, hey, like, don't forget the gospel, right? Don't forget the people that are out there. And I think one of the hard things as a pastor is when your church is growing and you're ministering to multiple people, more and more people, that you can forget there's a world out there that doesn't know Jesus, and your whole world begins to just revolve around the local church and the believers. And so your circle that maybe used to be large now is getting smaller and smaller and tighter. And so as a pastor, I think that's where I started really struggling was, man, like I've got to preach the gospel. Like, you can't preach the gospel every Sunday at your church. I mean, yes, included, make sure it's known, but you're not going to preach a salvation message, every week at your church. So while that discipline of preaching through books of the Bible, preaching through topics, was super, beneficial for me. And I always laugh because people say the evangelists, well, they have like 5 sermons, right? And
got your sugar stick.
Yeah, exactly. So I tell them, hey, you can go back and listen to 8 years of sermons if you like. I've got more.
Yeah, but that's when you were a pastor. Now that you're an evangelist, you've forgotten them.
I forgot them, but they're recorded now, so I could just go back and listen to them. So, but I think one of the great things that, here's the difference for me. When you're a pastor in a church, the beautiful thing is you get to walk with people through seasons of life. And you see the whole, if you will, discipleship process happen. As an evangelist, one of the awesome thing for me is, man, we get to see new babies born all the time. And so that's what I tell people, like my heart, like I've often talked about it like doctors, right? You have your primary care doctor who sees you through all of your life, right? You have your pediatricians. They're going to focus on babies and stuff like that. You got your delivery room doctors. They just want to see babies born, right? Now, all of those are necessary and needed throughout every stage of life. Nobody looks at a delivery room doctor and goes, you're not a real doctor. All you do is deliver babies, right? But nobody looks at a primary care doctor and said, you don't even know how to deliver a baby. What do you do? You're not a real doctor. They're all necessary. They're all needed. And I think pastors, evangelists, teachers, they're all needed.
That's great. That's a great analogy too. That's good.
Thanks. Yeah.
Where'd you read that?
I didn't read
it
actually.
That on your own?
Hey, I'm taking credit for real, because I was talking with a guy that literally, the guy's like, how would you describe yourself? I said, man, I'm literally like a delivery room doctor. I want to see people born. I want to see people born again over and over and over again. Not the same person, but I want to see people listen, right? No, not really. Yeah. But I want to see people born again,
in the Baptist church long enough. That's
right.
You
so, but that's where my heart is, right? And I I was like, and then the illustration really just flowed out. So maybe we should write a book about it or something.
There you go.
Or y'all could write it and give me credit. That'd be better.
Yeah. I'll get right on that in my schedule, in my free time. We'll do that.
Yeah. You're a pastor. You don't have a free time, I guarantee you.
Amen. So, hey, let me ask you this: as like an evangelist, right? And even as a pastor, what did day-to-day evangelism look like for you? Like, because you mentioned just a minute ago, we're still in a lost world, and there's a tendency for Christians to get in a bubble that just continues to shrink and shrink and shrink.
Yeah.
So, how did you practice getting out of that bubble and leading your people to get out of that bubble? And what kind of advice would you give for pastors to do that?
Yeah, it's intentionality, right? And I go back to praying, right? If we're praying for opportunities, this is I think the 7 go-tell prayers that I put out. Like, if I'm praying that regularly, I'm looking for those opportunities. Amazingly, right? I'm finding those opportunities. God's opening up those doors. And so I think outreach, evangelism, it is an absolutely supernatural work. And so that's where it all starts. So I'd tell pastors, number one, and be praying and living by example. So when you pray it, live it out, share the stories, and celebrate. And if we'll do that regularly as followers of Jesus, if we'll do that regularly as pastors, as lovers of God, I think that's just going to spread. So I'm praying, I'm practicing, I'm sharing the stories, and we're celebrating this. And I don't know how that doesn't spread, you know?
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good stuff. So let me just kind of ask one other question that's really specific to your context and your personality and your experience. But I think it can be helpful to a lot of guys in different contexts, because for 8 years you served as the pastor of a revitalizing church. You know, you're growing, you're booming, you're doing great things. But for the most part, in your itinerant speaking, especially during the summer, you're talking generally youth camps, right?
Yeah. Yes.
During this time of year, you're primarily looking at D-Nows, Discipleship Now type weekends,
right?
Fall retreats, or I guess spring retreats at this time of year.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, preaching primarily to students, whether that be junior high or high school students, right? And so kind of walk us through what correlates across both of those preaching opportunities, but then also how do you differentiate those two? So recently I had a guy ask me, like, he said, "Hey, I know you did 7 years in youth ministry." He said, "You know, do you think you could still speak to teenagers?" And I'm just kind of like, I don't.
Yeah, you could.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, all my jokes are old. I'd have to come up with new jokes, but so. You know, so kind of walk me through what works across the board, and then what are some differences you see that need to be made?
Yeah.
So David's actually asking, is potty humor eternal? Like, does that always work in youth sermons?
It's cross-generational. Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
That may get you in trouble somewhere. But yeah, I would say for me, here's what transcends, right? And we know this. It's the gospel transcends.
Yeah.
You can communicate it different ways. But what I found this, when you preach the word, the Spirit's going to do his work. And God, for whatever reason, I've always sensed like I could preach to anyone, anywhere, no matter age, demographic, you know, education, whatever. And here's the reason why. I had a older gentleman one time in church tell me this. He goes, "You know what? When you preach, you make it so simple." And here's my aim. My aim is always to try to make it as simple and understandable as possible, no matter who I'm speaking to. And so I don't want to, you know, I don't want to dumb it down for students. I don't want to dumb it down for adults, but I want to make it, you know, where they can get it. They can understand it. And so, you know, that's just what I pray for and I ask God to do. Typically, whether it's students or adults, man, I'm just preaching a text. And so I'm preaching from the text, not into a text. And so I want to start with the word, the authority of the word, the authenticity of the word, the power of the word, because that's where my story may get your emotions stirred, but God's word is what's going to actually give you life. And so I want to use God's word. And that's, I've seen, I think that's where you get from manipulation to, you know, guys get accused of manipulation, as they just use stories or whatever. And hopefully, I think we're seeing less and less of that, just storytelling and, and here's a scripture because we're in church, I'll throw this in. But I think we see a lot less and less of that. So open up the word, preach the word, illustrate it differently for sure for different age groups.
Right.
But God's going to do his work through his word.
I think that's helpful. I think that's really helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Ryan, one final question. This will be an easy one. What are some, I hope it'll be easy for you. What are some things that you're using on the day-to-day that would help pastors out there? Like some things that you were, let's say you're a pastor 2 years in, a year in, something like that, and you're going, man, I need this resource. What would that be for you at this point?
So for me, I think our prayer book we just wrote. No, so I think that would be a great one for people if they're struggling with how do I even begin to pray evangelistically. It'd be a great start. But I would say for me, this is my Bible app. I love Logos. I love. So those two things are kind of big for me in my life. I keep on my phone apps like Share Your Faith. So I would have an app on my phone some way that I could leverage. I was on a plane, literally opened up this app, talking to this lady, opened up the Share Your Faith app and just was like, hey, check this out. And just walked her through, the gospel through this app,
Wow.
And the lady trusts Christ right there on a plane. I mean, so that's an example. I've done that with my kids, hey, because kids want to see apps, they want to look at something, right? And so it's right there. So have something like that. But for me, the main ones, I'm not super, I'm not super techie as far as the new next app or whatever. I have my Bible app, YouVersion. I have Logos on my phone. I have the Share Your Faith. And then, the other one I really like is Echo. It's a prayer app. If it just sends you reminders. You can put prayer requests in. You can set times of reminders and stuff like that. So those are for me spiritually things that help me stay on task, stay on point, and stuff like that. I'd say take a lot of stuff off your phone rather than what you put on your phone. I think most pastors are just distracted, to be honest. So I mean, not to get preachy or anything, but man, when I as a pastor sat with some pastors, and I'm like, they've got all these games and everything on their phone. And I'm like, man, like, I don't even know how. So I would say you probably need to take some stuff off rather than put some stuff on. So for me, I just try to keep it simple because I know I'll get distracted. So, so for me.
I hear you.
In that vein, I found Reinke's book, 10 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. I found that helpful. That's a great little book.
Yeah, was it 10 Ways Your Phone is Changing You?
Yeah, Crossway put it out a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
it's really, really good.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, I have to check that out. Hey,
and
as far as
centered at that, so.
Hey, that's good. I don't know if y'all have seen this new youth ministry thing out. It's called Feed the Youth Ministry. It's a catechism they've put out, and some. It's really solid, dude. They're going after Bible illiteracy among teenagers, and they're saying, hey, we believe one of the ways to do that is through the catechism we've kind of walked away from. And so you might want to check it out. Just feed.bible, I think, is their website. They got some pretty cool resources, man, and it's free. It's so it looks pretty good. So
Ryan, where can we find you? Let's say a pastor's watching this, he wants to book you or find your prayer manual. Where can we find all that information? Give us all your information.
Other than the links we're going to put in the description.
There you go. Right. There you go. Yeah. Right. So rageministries.com is, man, really where you can find everything. Rage, RAGE ministries.com. And then, on social media, it's Rage Ministries or the Ryan Fontenot. So you can check out all those, man.
The Ryan Fontenot.
Yeah, Ryan Fontenot was taken, man. So it could have been a Ryan Fontenot, but I figured they would think that stood for something, and it doesn't. So or Ryan Fontenot official, but it's the Ryan Fontenot. So, I don't know. Yeah, isn't yours the Dr. David?
Yeah,
Norman?
no. No.
See, if I was Dr. Ryan Fontenot, that one's probably available, but I'm not a doctor. So.
Although for very briefly, I had an email address back in college. Oh gosh,
This is good.
That was the awesome David.
Hey, see, the awesome. See, okay.
The awesome Ryan Fontenot. Done.
No, that's not. No, just the Ryan Fontenot. That's horrible. But yeah, rageministries.com. So you can find all of it there.
Rageaholic had the wrong connotation.
Yeah, rage. Yes, it does have. I think so. I think it has the wrong connotation.
No rage.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Well, we will
don't have no idea where to find us. Just look in the show notes.
We will put all of Ryan's information down in the show notes. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that it was an encouragement and a blessing to you, and we will see you on next episode. And Ryan, thank you again for joining us. And we'll catch you guys later.
Let's do it again sometime.
Thank you, guys. All right.